Hi, everybody. Today I'm talking with a very talented designer, developer, and entrepreneur, Pascal Pixel. He has been tinkering in this space from a very early age and has a slew of fantastic projects that he can assign his name to, including his current project, the uniquely named Horse Browser. We'll talk more about that as well. And we're also going to dive into a bit on what makes design teams successful, something which Pascal has a lot of experience around. As a bonus, Pascal also happens to enjoy pixel art. All the more reason for you to stick around and listen to the full interview. So Pascal, I've been following you for quite some time, and I love the content you create and the apps you're building, as well as all the designs you've created over the years. And so I figured let's just get you on a call and just chat with you on what makes you tick, what motivates you, why do you do the things that you do. So before I like to always ask the basic question of how do you get started in tech?
Oh God. I got started in tech because I had no other choice. I it's a long time. I used to be a big fan of Deviant Art. I don't know if you know that
Oh,
website.
absolutely, very, very well, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I was bored one summer and somebody gave me Coral Draw on a DVD, I think, or CD-ROM. I guess it is. Yeah, it's
Probably back
CD-ROM.
then, yeah.
So I was bored for the summer. I had no internet, so I was like, okay, let me try this. And then um, I made some illustrations, and I found out what vector was. So that's my first time finding out, like, wait, you can draw shapes with math? What? So I don't have to be Pascal Pixel all the time, you know? And that was fun. Like I could upload stuff to DeviantArt that I was just working on, and lo and behold, people actually liked what I was uploading. It was a lot of fun. I got some awards from them. They call them daily deviations. Sorry, I have to not native English. I've never pronounced the word deviation before, so it's like the old Dutch coming in. But yeah, got some awards with that. That was fun. But the main thing was the vectors. Like the idea that you could draw shapes with math was like completely new to me, and that set me on a path of becoming a terrible artist because
I love that.
I started to code, which was yeah, that's pretty much the end for your art career. I think it's so much more fun. Like I was always looking for something fun and new and really interesting that I wanted to do that never stopped being a challenge, and that's what coding is. Like it never ends. So before that, it was something new every year, and suddenly it was this code, code, code. And the first things I started to do was code custom user interface themes for Windows XP because a lot of people were doing those at the time. And again, like people loved it. I got a daily deviation with it. Magazines wanted to add my icons and themes on CD-ROMs that came with their magazine. So all of a sudden, I was like, "Wow, okay, so can you send me one of those magazines?" I'm like, "Sure." So there I was, 16 years old, and I had magazines with my stuff in it, and it was just crazy. Like the world outside is very boring as a teenager, and having like the internet was something that completely changed that. It was completely crazy. You could do anything you wanted to, and yeah, when I found web design, that was pretty much the end. Like I, I never got back to DeviantArt. I never started making illustrations again, and I'm just obsessed with user interfaces ever since. So yeah,
That's there are worse hobbies to have, in the grand scheme of things.
I think so. It never gets boring.
Did you ever get into Flash? Because you mentioned you like vector and like coding, and Flash was at that time, in like late 1990s, early 2000s, like the perfect tool for like kind of combining both. Were you ever in that world?
I was. I myself didn't do much Flash, but one of the first websites I made with someone else it was called May First Reboot. It was like a annual competition at the time. I
Yeah.
don't
Yep.
remember the
Yep. Yep.
brand that did it. Yeah, we got a prize with the website we made where we had a. It was very silly. Like it was the most Flash thing you can do. First, you commit the biggest sin, right? The biggest sin, You just turn on music without people asking. Yeah. We had a whole music player in this website. But the main thing was it was supposed to be like a portfolio template for displaying your stuff as a photographer or designer. And what we'd done is we put a click wheel in the bottom, like an iPod click wheel. Because what is a better way to interact with a website when you have a mouse than to drag your mouse in little circles? It made no sense, but everyone thought it was so cool. So yeah, that was the foray with Flash. But I really started my own career as a coder with the fact that Flash wasn't going to be on the iPhone, and I knew I just learned HTML5 and like how to do animations with SVGs and paths.
Yeah.
I think in like math now. Like if I make an animation or a three, like I think in 3 dimensions, I have like awareness of this pretty well. Apparently, I mean, according to my girlfriend, like I bump less into walls than she does. I instead just fall over railings sometimes. But yeah, that was the main thing that I started making money with was like all these websites were suddenly like, hey, my website doesn't work on the iPhone, and I was like, well, have I got news for you? I can make it look exactly the same and have all the cutesy animations, but uh, obviously my partnership with the guy who made Flash did not work out after that because he said the iPhone was going to die because it didn't support Flash, and I said I think Flash is going to die because it doesn't work on the iPhone. Yeah, we still talk sometimes. Like he lives on the streets here somewhere. You know, I give him some money sometimes. He's cool. Like he's all right.
Do you miss those days though, where you could have an interface with a little click wheel and it has like the crazy creativity side of it? Because you look at the web today, a lot of it is very much almost templatized, even though there really is no template. It's always like a similar design. That right now the bento design is like all the rage, but it's going to be replaced with something else that every other website you visit goes to.
Yeah,
Whereas in the Flash era, everything was different, and it was almost like the perfect translation of whatever zany things were in like the creative minds of people who are in their late teens and so on was represented. It was almost like a MySpace of like creative output for professional web developers.
yeah. It was a lot more fun because you could just do the most insane stuff. Also, operating systems. Like I said, I made custom Windows XP themes. The fact that you could customize it that far, right? And I remember that slowly getting locked down. Like first, I also made like Mac OS dock icons, for example. Well, we used Candy Bar by the Icon Factory to do that to replace the icons, and that's gone. We could still theme like OS Tiger, OS 10 Tiger. You could still theme that, but after that, Apple also started locking it down behind system protection. So over time, I just saw like the thing I actually really like to do, customize my operating system, just disappear. And I remember when I got my first aluminum iMac, and that was just terrible because I was so excited. I'm like, I'm going to have a new computer. I'm going to have a modern iMac instead of like the little crap Macintosh that I had. And I was like, this is going to be crazy. And then nothing worked, right? I couldn't adjust any of the icons. I couldn't adjust the themes. And then it just sat there. So like for the entirety of my first week with my new iMac, I was just sitting there and realizing that I actually did nothing on the computer. Like I thought I'm like, oh, I'm a big computer guy. I'm a computer guy. And then when I couldn't mess with my operating system, suddenly I realized like, oh wait, actually I do absolutely nothing on these things except obsess over making crazy interfaces. So I just sat there staring at it. And yeah, then like I said before, that's when the Flash thing happened. So I found web design and I'm like, wait, I can still do stuff here. But yeah, some of the first websites I made with that as well, it was more like an illustration than anything else. Like I would have a fan. That was the menu, like it would open as a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my favorite site that I made actually had this little guy on it, which is like my super old little Mac computer. Appleche, his name is. And it was exactly this. It was a wooden frame, and this thing was sitting on there. There were just items sitting on there, and the website scrolled horizontally, which made no sense. And it was so much fun. Skeuomorphism was great as well, and just all that's gone. Everything's a template now. Everything has the same rounded corners, and the way that you really know that it's over is my friend Jono Rickwell. He's a designer. I think he did one of the first editions of Product Hunt, for example.
Okay.
So he's been doing like he's an amazing like interface designer, as in like simple, easy, standardized interfaces that just look like you want to lick them, right? He's been doing that for so long, and he recently started sharing on his Twitter. He's like, "Guess what year I made this?" And his stuff is very standardized because it's like supposed to be very like simple, right? But I could still see it. You could see the 2015 standard button, standard standard bars, standard gradients, standard this, and then today's, which I mean, yeah, it looks more modern, but it's the same thing. It's just like people are moving at such a slow rate. Like it's so boring. Like the fact that he can do a Twitter poll where he makes people guess whether his design is from 9 years ago or today is the saddest thing ever. Like it makes no sense.
Yeah, and getting back to your theming story a little bit, right? It's actually pretty fun because I was never a creator of themes, but I was a heavy consumer of it. We had a family shared computer, and so every day I saw a new theme. My parents would be like, "What? I can't read the text anymore." I'm like, "It's the Matrix theme. It's like it's supposed to move around like that." And I always wondered why the theming. I used Windows for a long time. Now, of course, I'm on a Mac for the past 10 years, but with Windows at least, I found even after Microsoft unofficially stopped supporting theming. I don't know how deep in the weeds you want to get into this, but I remember you could like always hack uxtheme.dll and then start installing themes anyway and make these things work. And I think like probably with like Windows 8 or something, they closed that loophole off as well. At which point you had no choice. You had to basically go with the default look and then maybe change the colors of your things there. But the default colors were terrible also, so I never liked those colors. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to give up on it as well. So yeah, there's just something in the water or in the air at that time for all of us I got started with computers around the same age as you. And I think there was just something there that made us all kind of gravitate towards similar things. And in many ways, also, I think end up in similar spaces as well. We were like, trying similar things, web design and dabbling with animation and so on. So that's actually really interesting to hear in terms of it. But why do you think the web design that you see is so commonplace and not unique anymore? Like, do you think it's just like people don't want to see creative things? Is it because it's difficult to build creative things, or what is your take on it?
That's just the obsession with ease of use. Like what you said, like you installed a Matrix theme, and it's awesome because obviously, obviously, it's awesome. But yeah, it's just ease of use, and it's just what happens when corporations get bigger and they start to. I mean, honestly, it's all Apple's fault. Obviously, it's all Apple's fault. I think especially before the iPhone, the general consensus was more like design is a funny thing that you add later. Like it doesn't really matter, right? Yeah, it was just an afterthought. Like, yeah, it could be nice, whatever, but like if you just put up like a shiny aqua orb on something, like I don't know if you've seen some of the like Windows XP boot screens and like older versions of Windows and the weirdest stuff that they ship within Plus, like it was all just crazy.
Yep.
So that was fine. Like it didn't matter for you to have like a consistent styling or branding. It didn't give you an edge. And just at some point, it just became like less about Mac versus Windows, right? It just became like I want to differentiate because now both our platforms can basically do everything, right? Like now basically everyone's just using it to get on the internet. So it doesn't even matter anymore. And also the fact that the iPhone came out and people started really focusing on phones. I've been saying this a lot. I think for the past 14 years, operating systems have just completely stood still. Like the fact that Google came out with Google Docs where people could like live edit documentation at this, or documents at the same time. That should actually never have happened. Like Microsoft, the big boss at that point with Microsoft Office, should have clearly been building these type of like live user interactions into their operating system from 2011. And they just never did because everyone stopped caring about desktops. So yeah, desktops just stagnated with innovation. And then it was like, okay, so now we have to differentiate somehow that isn't features because we've just lost all our developers. All our developers are now working on Android and iOS. So we're just here now. I guess what do we do? And one guy's like, well, we could make it like really tight styling, like a consistent styling thing. And then that just became the thing. Also, the success of the iPhone obviously made everyone realize that there really is something to having consistent themes and styling, etc. But I think before the iPhone, it was very difficult, especially when dealing with technology, to convince anyone in that market that you should have good, consistent design because it didn't matter. Like, you could get an MP3 player that looked like a little soda pop. Like, after the G3 iMacs came out, everything became translucent and trashy, and you could get like $1, $1 MP3 players that came with candy. And like everything just looked crazy and insane because that was all they cared about. Like it was just like what screams the loudest, what is the craziest marketing? Because honestly, if you think about, for example, the iMac G3, I is that really good design? Like, it's crazy, right? This lamp's orange and it's weirdly shaped, right? But did it have to be transparent plastic so I can see the electronics inside whirring? I don't think that's actually good design. Like, this is a good looking lamp. The iMac G3 has a nostalgia factor, and it's a crazy thing because this is the thing that it replaced, right? But honestly, it's just not that good a design. Like, good design started really with the iPhone making everything extremely minimalistic and simple, except of course the software, because that was fun. We could have skeuomorphic insanity for a couple of years, which I really liked. And yeah, then that died too, right? Yeah.
It's always interesting seeing how design trends evolve and devolve and things like that. A common question I have with my design team oftentimes is, you take, let's take cars are a great example of like, designs that are classic and not classic and things like that. If you take a car that was built, let's say, in the last couple of years that you think is a very great design, you had a time machine, you went back to, let's say, the 80s and you introduced that car to that audience, would it have resonated with them as like a really cutting edge thing? Or would it have been like, what in the world is this? This is horrible. Get it out as quickly as possible.
I've been suffering through this for the past year. I'm refusing to buy a car because my brain just refuses to drive. Like, okay, the Tesla, yeah, cool. It looks like I'm on a Star Trek episode from the 80s. Like, it's great. It's spaceship. But just look at the street. All these cars just look like the same little plump, weird dinguses. And if you just look at like a Giulietta Spider from the 1960s, I think, 50s, like classic Italian convertible car, that's what I want. Like just with an electric engine, obviously, like, but you can't get it. Like I'm looking at these like shitty old cars. I really want them. I want even the 2000s, like you had like a terrible, terrible Mazda Miata because I played Need for Speed Underground 2 way too many times. So I want that. but but there's all these cars and they're gorgeous. And like my neighborhood especially, it's really funny with this actually, because like for some reason, I think it's also because there's just a lot of expats living here. But that Mazda Miata, there are like 5 of them in this neighborhood. Uh, that one like Porsche 911, there are 5 of them, and it's like not a new one, it's the one from the 80s because nobody wants, right? Like they don't want. There's one Mazda Miata here outside that's like there's a young guy who's driving it. He looks like he's on TikTok. He looks insane. So I'm like, why are you driving this thing? And he's because it's the 1992 one that goes this with the headlights. Like
That's right. Yep.
and he's like, because it's fun. It looks crazy. Like, yeah, because everything's standardized. It drives me mad. I would love to have some sort of, um, yeah, I'm sure there's like, are there like convert this to electric or something? Yeah.
There are custom body shops that will, you give them an old vehicle, they maintain the exterior or the interior if you care about it, but then everything else is upgraded, modernized, and meeting all the latest safety standards and things like that. Because, as much as I love some of these old cars, I like the safety of some of these new ones as well, because
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, the crumple zones weren't really understood science back in the day. It's like, yeah, you get into a car, just add more metal to it, you're gonna be fine. And it turned out like, plastic and carbon fiber may actually be a better thing than like metal and like keeping it safe.
Hmm.
But there are places you can do that. But I looked into this a few times as well, because I'm same thing. I'm like, cars today, they don't look nice. Cars back then look really nice. But I love the technology though on the cars today. Like I love like being able to like have CarPlay, or just like be able to
Yeah,
have like
exactly.
music and all that stuff. Is there a world where we can make this happen? It is. It's got to pay extra for it, and a lot extra for it,
A
depending on
lot extra.
exactly depending on where you want to go and how what vehicles you want to convert. But yeah, I mean, for the right price, everything's doable. As it turns out.
Yeah. I mean, that price should show us how unique it is at this point. Like, if you just want a 1992 Miata like this guy does, like, he told me it's hard to even get replacement parts. So
Yeah,
he's just paying an insane amount of money to drive that silly little car because he loves it. And I respect that. I respect the
yeah.
man in a Mazda Miata.
And I know one of the things you mentioned in on your website as part of like what you've done is that you enjoy working primarily by yourself or in very very small teams. And so tell me more about that. Like most people don't come to that conclusion on their own automatically. So there must have been definitely
Hmm.
some experiences you've had where you're like, I think I'm going to do this by myself because
No
that's
solopreneur, no solopreneur, even though we want to pretend as much as we can that we're like living the dream life, none of us chose this. We just obviously did not fit into a single office and were fired 100 kajillion times. So I was too annoying to be in an office from when I was, when I was an intern. I was too much. It was crazy. Like, I was involved with, like, I was talking about this just a few days ago with one of my coworkers from back my first internship. It's like, it was so weird. Like, the CEO, like, I was like talking with him and stuff all the time, like in the middle of a meeting, and he's like, "Yeah, that was really weird that you did that. Why would you? Why did you do that?" And I'm like, yeah. Now that I think of it, actually, it was weird that people were talking about me so much because I was an intern. He's like, yeah, but you were fucking everywhere. Like, yeah, it's just there's something wrong. It's like, and it's mostly the fact that I just want to get stuff done, you know. And you have to respect office politics. Like, you have to respect the process. You have to respect that everyone has an opinion, and that from like interaction between people, like, you get a better design sometimes, right? Like, it gets better. It gets to the point where if you just in a review process, it goes to nowhere. But yeah, like, I did not have the patience to constantly sit there and just be frustrated because, especially with digital things, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not the Miata that's been here for 22 years standing outside that you can't get to change. God, I have to disable these bubbles.
I
They're
find them quirky.
gone. No, now I can do this and it won't bubble
There
anymore.
you go.
But yeah, it's not like the Miata that's like, oh yeah, you make it once and it has to be great for the next 24 years so that a TikToker like uses it. It's, it's digital stuff. Like, just ship it and get it over with. You don't like it, then change it. And that whole way of thinking doesn't work. So yeah, that's really the frustration. I don't know a
And
single solopreneur that chose to be one.
no, I agree with you. It's always a question of oftentimes the more large the organization or more complicated the team structure, the more difficult it is to get consensus and get things done. And design, often even technology sometimes, it's not really a consensus driven environment. You need to make a bet, ship it quickly, see what people say. And like you mentioned, it's always easy to change things very quickly. And yeah, it hasn't gotten any better in large organizations
Yeah.
since then. I love working in large organizations. I know it's gonna sound really weird, but it's a balance solopreneurship life with my blogging, book writing, video recording, and things like that. But then I also have like a, I like to call it a respectable day job where I work in large companies doing very similar things, but in, working with building consensus and things like that. Definitely pros and cons to it, but I agree though. In your view, what is the ideal makeup of a design team?
The ideal makeup of a design team is one person.
Yeah, I had a hunch you were going to say that, but yeah, just wanted to
I mean,
hear
that's
it.
a very old quote. It's like a 1950s quote, I think. It's design is not a democracy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, design by committee never works, right? But yeah, the thing is, you have to find the one person that can really do that, that can do a good job, that you can trust, right? But design is frustrating. I think the best teams in design operate very much like you see in like a French style kitchen. Yes, chef, right? You just really work your ass off. And it has to be a chef that is actually really inspiring and knows all their stuff, knows what's important, and knows how to get the best result and the best product. But that mindset, like if I could work under like Gordon Ramsay, but it's a designer, right? It's like, yeah, I will suffer and struggle in your kitchen for the next 3 years, and then I'll go and open my own kitchen at some point. And I think that's the best mindset for this, which is also why it doesn't work, because design teams have to keep growing because companies get bigger, and that's where the analogy fails.
Yep. No, that is a very valid point there. We mentioned that the primary designer, someone who's inspirational, someone that the team can look up to and be, excited to work around. What quality do they need to have? Is it success in the market, or is it going to be mostly just a level of, I guess, what is the right word I'm looking for? Credibility with the team.
Um, I don't really. I think I think like taking the analogy of the chef again. It's like you're trying to get stuff done. You're trying to get as quickly as possible, and you have very angry customers who're sitting right outside. Right? You don't want to hair in your food, so the restaurant analogy works so well for this because it's like the reason that they are head down is because the customers are so close. Like if you mess up, it's right there. Like they can just come in. If you really mess up, right? Like maybe they'll drag you out there. So that's why that works better. It's more like you know that any moment you can get a customer just go like, this is terrible. It's also a small process, right? It's like you make a dish, it's a small process. It's more about consistency and constantly delivering the same high quality dish over and over and over again. I feel guilty when I order the same thing twice because like someone in there just put away the boxes, for making that thing. But yeah, it's the best type of person for this is somebody who knows how to hunt after and have fun with their team. Like they know the quality, right? They know you have to really deliver, but they also know that everyone's going to screw up and that that's fine and it is fun and that everyone just, and you can just, but you have to call it out. And that's the stuff that doesn't work with large organizations, and especially like office things. Like you can't keep up in such a sterile environment where everyone's sitting in the desk and you have these meetings, etc. It doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work like in a kitchen where you can just go, oh, come on, dude. I know you screwed up. Better luck next time. Like, come on, keep going. The teasing, the whatever, it's all about how you interact with the people around you. And that's it. It's how do you motivate and stimulate people while being able to remain harsh without them growing bitter at you over time. That's the hard part. I think that what makes a really good head designer.
No, very true. How do you balance in some ways of letting someone fail because that's the best way they're going to learn versus jumping in and just doing it for them as well? And I think that greatly varies between large
Mm.
organizations where the default answer is no one should make mistakes because recovering from it is extremely costly versus smaller, more nimble organizations where that's how we learn. You're going to make mistakes, we'll undo it, we'll quickly wrap itself around it. And yeah, that's a tension that I see across. I'm a product manager by trade, and I see very similar things in that environment as well, where consensus often doesn't work, and oftentimes the best way to learn is to make mistakes because that sticks with you, and you learn exactly the kind of like the dark side of the moon. You kind of know exactly, you if you only focus on the things you know all the time, you'll never get to explore the boundaries of what you're lacking in knowledge or skills that you can then figure out. And failing is the best way to do that. But
Mhm.
yeah, it is such a difficult thing to translate in put in practice actually in any organization.
And I think we can see it we can naturally see how capitalism has fixed this, basically, right? How the market has forced this. The reason that there are so many agencies is because you just can't maintain consistency over a long amount of time while working on the same thing. So you swap in new things, right? It's hard to think outside the box if you're in the box, obviously. So while consultants generally are the most horrendous people to put on like a big ass product, right? Because you can't get a really good grasp and you don't have to stick around to actually see it implemented and see it through. For design, you can see it through. It's not a big project, right? You're redesigning something. It's not a big project. It's a one-off thing that has a purpose. And design obviously is a solution, right? So there's a problem. Here's a solution. Project finished.
Speaking of redesigns, I noticed that you redesigned the Next Web, which is like a
Oh
massive
yeah.
website with like, at this point, probably millions of pages, many generated by, lots of writers and things like that. How would that process go? Because that seemed like, having done web designs for smaller projects and redesigns for smaller, activities, that just seems like full of stories.
It was completely crazy. It was my first job ever, actually. So I barely know how to describe that. It's so long ago. I think it's 22 years ago. No, 12 years ago now. I mean, I'm not that old. That's 12 years ago. This is a super long time ago. Yeah. How did that go? I had no idea what I was doing. What happened was the Next Web wrote an article, or somebody for the Next Web wrote an article, and the article said, "Stop looking for unicorn designers. Like, stop looking for somebody who can do code and design and do your prints, and tell you what good typography is, and stop looking for them. You're not going to find them. Like, you as a business need to learn to respect that these are separate jobs and that it's not easy. Like, you need to hire multiple people and it's hard. Stop looking for unicorn designers." And I was like 21 or something. And I just went under it. I was like, what does this mean? Like, I'm a unicorn designer then? Because that's everything I was doing, you know? I mean, might just be crazy hyper focus or just like interests that are scattered all over the place. But I commented on that with like, so wait, I'm a unicorn designer then? And then the CEO commented like, well, I guess you are. Here's my number. Like, and I was hired a week later and just got started. Yeah. Yeah, it was really crazy.
That's really impressive. When you think of unicorn designers, do you think there's value in us in let's take the head chef example, from your previous moments. Do you think there's value in a single person knowing design, coding, typography, accessibility, layout, typography, all these various things? Or is it okay for someone to not be, well-rounded in all those areas and still be effective as a design leader?
Mm, in the future, in the age of AI, the idea guys will rule us all. Like, but right now, um, if your head chef does not know how to cook an egg, yeah, like there's Gordon Ramsay actually uses this. He says that he makes people make a scrambled egg to see their control and to see how they care about something so simple and how they can make it good. Yeah, like you need to do it. Like I once actually did an interview and I didn't get the job because the I got approached. This was for crypto kitties before the NFT boom. We didn't even know what NFTs were. This was for crypto kitties, Um, and they approached me because I could do design and code at the same time. And they didn't have anyone on the team like that. So they first had me interview with their designer. And their designer said, like, wait, you know how to code? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I don't think designers should know how to code. All my friends who learned how to code now don't have jobs from design school. Like all her compatriots from design school. And I was like, really? But they know how to code. So like, what happened? She's like, yeah, they all learned Flash. I was like, well, that's not really why they don't have jobs now. Like it's more the Flash thing, right? But she was really staunch on this, or like really strict. She was like, no, sorry, like I don't think you should work under me because like you can code. I was like, fine, okay, well, what did you want me to do anyway? And then she gave me an example. She's like, fine, so we got to make a kitty, right? We got to make an endless amount of kitties. How would you do that? And like I just said, like my whole beginning is vector shapes and path drawing. So I'm like, like you make a standardized set of attributes with SVGs, change the fill and the color, and then you use each unique hash, you're saying, to generate like a guaranteed unique cat, and then draw it in with these little shapes. And she just looked at her colleague, and they looked at her, and they just went like, that took us 3 months to figure out, and you just said that in 10 seconds? I'm like, yeah, I guess. But they wouldn't hire me because of this. They were like, no, you can't. So she had me interview with the person who was in charge of code. He gave me a coding test. He put a global state variable outside of a React component, and he said, should I do this? And I said, no. He's like, why not? I said, I don't know, but don't. And he's like, failed that test. You should be able to explain why I shouldn't be doing this. Not hired as a designer, not hired as a coder. And they continued having the same problem. They didn't even realize that they'd approached me. Like afterwards, I got an email or something that said, "Good luck finding a job." I'm like, I have a job. What are you talking about? Like, it was so weird. I'm like, yeah, I can see why you guys need someone who can do both things because you can't even interview for it right now.
When you
Yeah.
describe the idea of like how do you generate pretty much an infinite number of shapes and make them be unique, do you remember? This is going back and like deep into the history at this point. Do you remember a website called Levitated.net by Jared
Mm,
Tarbell? He created
no.
mathematical examples of like creative, what we call creative coding today. Essentially, he wrote code that drew all kinds of things. What we then processing today was done in, I think it was Flash back then. Here's this great article on how to create basically the Space Invader style robots, because it's basically a pattern. You start with the middle, and then you just have like an 8 by 8 grid, and you put all these things in there. I remember he said like if you do it correctly, you can get 2 to the power of some ridiculous number of shapes, like the billions of shapes you can generate randomly. I wasn't sure if you remember reading those things or if you remember that. As
No,
a
I'm not
tangent,
aware
this
of
is from like
these.
2007 or
Sounds
2006.
really cool though. So it
Yeah, I
was,
probably dig it up at some point.
yeah, send it over. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, but the interesting thing about designers and coding, in many ways, though, right? It seemed like that organization and that team culture would not have been a good fit for you. So I think you probably dodged a bullet
Oh
by
yeah,
not
that's I
getting there.
immediately knew that. Like, I was like, this is great.
So one of the things that I've often seen companies do is they have a primary designer who does, like the oversees the work that's being done, and they delegate to agencies for a lot of the work because at that point they don't really need to know how things are done. It's like, yeah, the agency will deal with however they deal with things, but we care about the output primarily. And that in some ways may kind of balance out the difficulties of having unfiltered feedback that you can share in, let's say, in a larger organization. Do you see that model scaling in the future? Or do you think that also has a limited shelf life?
Everything has a limited shelf life. As soon as people find ways around the rules, it always breaks down, right? Systems, rules, destruction, then reshaping. It's always the same thing. So if this currently works, then it currently works. And I'm sure that in 3 years, we can buy a wonderful webinar or online course for our entire team to enjoy training in this as it becomes standardized, and then somebody will have all the books about the subject, and then it'll disappear. And then we'll go back to whatever worked in 1970 and then 1980.
Kind of like the car, retrofitting something that worked in the 1980s with whatever the modern format of it needs to be, so it works on all the things that we need to work on.
Yeah.
So you mentioned AI earlier, and I'm glad it took us like almost over 40 minutes to get to the AI topic, by the way, in the first couple of minutes. It is one of those things where in the past when we see technology getting better, it's like, okay, great, I can now offload some of the tasks that I wasted my time on, so I can spend more time doing the things I actually care about. Whereas with AI, this is something I feel personally, and I've seen others mentioning it as well. It doesn't even have an end to where it's going to stop at getting rid of like things that I'm doing that is not worth my time. It's it's dangerously getting close to doing the things that I actually get paid to do, and it does a pretty good job in some cases as well. And you mentioned that in the future the person doesn't need to know the actual art of how to make an egg, for example. It could just be that you mention make an egg, and then the best egg trained on the greatest egg chefs from around the world will be translated into this robotic device that then makes it for you.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that changing your career, your day-to-day job as part of just what you do?
Not at all. Like, it's the same as the conversation we had before, where you mentioned that everything seems to become standardized, right? I don't know if it was Pitchfork or there was some audio or music website that did a study or analysis of how different music is and how it's become more homogenized over the decades. Because that's a great example, right? Like, there's a lot of music and it's very consistent. And yeah, it gets more homogenized over the decades. There are certain sounds that we like more and more. It'll be very rare for you to get a Bohemian Rhapsody today. Like, the thing is, someone's still making Bohemian Rhapsody. There's someone out there doing the Lord's work in music. We'll just never know because they don't have enough Spotify subscribers, and Universal pulled their music license for TikTok, so they can't get on there anymore. But things trending more towards a standardization just allows you to not have to pay people for that as a job, right? It doesn't diminish the value of somebody's ideas. And if something is standardized and homogenized to the point where it can be done by AI with, then obviously that thing should have been automated in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult because so much of this conditioning, over a period of time. Because I think we had the luxury of growing up when there was deviant art and there was Newgrounds, there was MySpace, where you kind of knew that things don't have to be this way. There is a place where you can have an outlet and do things very differently. Yet when I talk to the current generation of people who are entering the design industry or the tech industry, they have no concept of it. Their entire world is skewed by what is shown by Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, and all these various services, and they have a certain style of how what kind of content gets promoted, what kind of things you see, like Spotify, for example, right? So if you wanted to even be like, what, I don't want this same kind of like commoditized, information or music or video, but I want to see something unique. Where do you even go these days? Like, it used to be Vimeo used to be a thing back then, but even now it's like YouTube, of course, is like the most dominant player in all this video sharing kind of content. I do kind of question when every minute, every moment of our lives, pretty much, is we're marketed to by these services, and it's in their best interest to keep us in those bubbles. Could DeviantArt, DeviantArt still is successful today, but definitely a fraction of what it was, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, because Dribble took over a large part of it. The community building part of it went to Facebook. I want to just share something cool with people went to Twitter, and all these networks are in many ways incentivized to keep people from going to a deviant art. You share a link to another website, for example, on almost any network, the algorithm supposedly de-boosts you so people won't really see it. And so its goal is to keep it all in there, in the kind of the no more the cool Windows XP or Windows 98 theme, but more like the traditional Mac OS theme, where it's like, yeah, it's going to look exactly like this, and your content's going to be a small part of the overall experience. I wonder how much of that is just shaping how people think about technology and design, where 5, 10 years from now, it's inevitable that we'll all just be replaced by AI because no one knows how to think beyond the boundaries what the AI does.
Hmm. Yeah, like you're talking a lot about how the input, right? The input of this system, like we're looking at it as a system. The input of the system is like we want the creativity, we want no wait. Input of the system is they want to market things to us. They, as in like media companies, etc. They want to take our time. But obviously the mindset here has never changed, right? It's just that it was harder to do in the 80s. Like it's harder to like take every single grain of your time unless you have the television, right? You have the
Yep.
television, then you're in control. So the input, the way of thinking hasn't really changed. Like the underlying why we're doing it hasn't changed, right? It's just like we need money. I will entertain you. You will watch things. I will advertise stuff, and you will give me money, or they will give me money by advertising to you. So that part hasn't changed. It's the output part that is indeed concerning, right? It's like how much time in a day do you have to squish new things in? And I before AI, I was actually before machine learning, I should say, I was actually thinking that we are in a bubble because like the amount of money that was getting pumped into television shows and everyone's trying to be the new Netflix and stuff. I was just like, this is so hyper oversaturated. Literally nobody can possibly make money from this. Like even a company as Disney has to at some point just like crash and burn because nobody's watching it because it's so oversaturated. It's insane.
Yep.
That part, I was like, this is going to crash and burn. But now with AI or machine learning, we won't have to do that anymore. We can just generate infinite. Like I'm really excited for when I can watch season 8 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. All the original actors, straight from the 90s. I'm sorry, Fran Drescher, head of the Actors Union or something. Don't sue me. I promise I'll keep it to myself. But like, I would like to see that. That would be really exciting. But again, it's a rehash, right? And it's like, will people's sense of authenticity be tweaked? Right? That's what you're saying. That's really the issue here. It's like
That's right.
people
Yep.
no longer know what good taste is.
Yes.
And my answer to that is that 99% of people already don't have good taste. And that they don't buy anything that's good. And that I ordered McDonald's yesterday. So what does it say about me and my Gordon Ramsay speech? Pretentious
McDonald's is
douche.
great. McDonald's is fantastic.
Standardized perfection. Yeah.
Standardized perfection. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting because 99% like you said, probably don't have good taste. That 1%, I do struggle to see how will that 1% get noticed enough to the point where they can hopefully influence the other 99%.
Yeah, this is the issue. This is just the depression. This is true. This is the real issue.
Yep.
I don't think they can because it's a market. Like the fact that I want this lamp doesn't mean anyone else wants this lamp. They'll just go
Yep.
to IKEA. It all comes down to human psychology to a degree where I recently bought a Lego set. I bought like a Japanese castle Lego set for adults. I was
Mhm.
like, I need a break. I'm getting burnt out. I need to do something else. Somebody said Lego. Danny
Yep.
Postma, he plays with the Lego bricks. Danny plays with Legos. I was like, I want Legos too. So I got these. It's supposed to be for adults. So it has the tiniest, stupidest parts for no reason. There's like 5 different things to put on. But all this is, of course, to get I mean, I could call it the IKEA factor, right? Like, I've made this. So I feel like it's good taste. I had the very sad experience of the fact that I've become too good at hand-eye coordination. I, I made it like this, and I never took my eyes off the instructions.
Yep.
So every every 10 minutes I just looked up and something had appeared in my hand. So my brain didn't do the thing. It didn't make me feel like you made this. So now I have this little Japanese Lego castle sitting somewhere next to my bed. And I'm just like, I look at it and like, terrible taste. The thing looks horrendous. The only reason you would think that that looks good in your house is because you think you made it. Like, it's obviously bad. Like, and I can see that now. And I'm like, I need to tear the thing apart and do it again. And then I'll be like, I made this. And then I'll like it. But it won't happen. Like, there's no ask for good taste, there's no market for it.
Yep. No, and the funny thing about Legos is that I don't know, but if you've seen it, but Lego also makes these like almost these flower bouquets you can make
Oh,
in
yeah,
Lego.
I saw those.
And so, I bought one. I'm like, you know what? This makes absolutely because I grew up on like Lego Technic and like things. I lived in Germany, early in my, I was young. So
Ah,
I grew up on Lego Technic and like all the Legos that you don't do like that kind of things in, like, no specialized design. Like I was Legos like general purpose, used for anything. Whereas this one was like, I can only use 90% of these pieces for making a bouquet. I can't use it for anything else. So actually, I bought one and I actually built it. It is again for adults, extremely complicated, extremely tricky. Same piece, like with like maybe a few millimeters of difference, and at the end, it does not look like a bouquet at all. I mean, of course, it's not gonna look like a bouquet. Like, how can you take arbitrary shapes, not even like pixel size, but like multiple pixel sizes of things, and then have it look like something that's very organic, which is like a flower. And yeah, similar effect. I liked it because I invested time in it. It's almost like the Eye of Sauron from like Lord of the Rings. It's like, okay, it's focusing on an area longer than like 10 seconds, which is the average time that people spend these days focusing on any one activity. So I'm like, okay, therefore it has more value in my mind at that moment because it's been an hour or two in building this whole
yeah,
thing end to end. But that was essentially it. Like that was the satisfaction I got. Not that it solved the problem or actually was met the goal of being a beautiful bouquet. It just meant that I did something without being interrupted for the entire period of time.
yeah, yeah.
But
That's really
so
what
now
it
let's
felt like.
Yeah, but now that when we quickly talk, about your app, that is, just a whole lot of fun in its own way. Like it exudes personality. And the more I talk to you, and I'm like, I can totally see why the horse browser, the way it's presented, the website, the style of it matches, pretty much you in its own way. So tell me about that. Like what, the browser market is it's a tough market, and so what got you to decide to create another browser?
Well, the branding first. Like I always, the branding is a result of me being a design consultant or freelancer, right, for like 15 years. And every time somebody's like, "What should I name my thing?" I would always just tell them like, "What's standing on the table on your right?" And they'd be like, "I'm like cornflakes." I'm like, "There you go. Your brand is cornflakes." They'd be like, "What?" And then I could start the knowledge part of the speech, right? Which is Airbnb's logo is a great example of this. When they redesigned that, the little loop, right?
Hmm.
The furor, the anger over that, right? It means nothing. It looks like this. It looks like, lady parts. It looks like a hammer. It's a pig. And it's like, no, it's nothing. That's the point. And now, 10 years later, if I walk outside, somebody drew that logo on the side of a building, and I know Airbnb. That's why it's good. It has no meaning. You give things meaning. That's why everyone's first logo is always just like their name and then like some word, cross section, use the same letter here. It's like people try to make things that have meaning, right? When they start a brand, they want to have something relatable, and that just never works. Like it doesn't work. You give it meaning. So that's horse is like my biggest my biggest issue with this. It's like me just taking revenge or like letting frustration of 50 years come out. I was watching, it was after Queen Elizabeth II had died, and there was a documentary on the television about Princess Anne and that she liked horses. And I had to name the folder for the repo. And I was like, screw it. Yeah, horse. Done. Here we go. This is the brand. We're now called horse. It makes no sense, but that's the purpose. Eventually, if things go well, it will have a meaning, hopefully. But right now, no.
I mean, you committed to it though. It's not just a name as horse. On the website, there are like all these 3D generated horses that are like animated and moving around. So you like went all in.
Yeah, I went all in. Like the horse is great. I had no feelings about horses whatsoever before this, but now I kind of want to own a ranch. So it's like it shows you how easily manipulable we are by total randomness. Like if I end up as a cowboy somewhere owning a ranch, then this will be even more epic. Like for me, it'll just be like, haha, I like things that I like for no reason at all now. Consistency and storytelling about yourself as a personality or a person much over time? Like, nope. I love the randomness of it. But yeah, no, the whole reason for horse was really, really simple. It's like, again, standard design thinking. I had a meeting with somebody who said that he was making a browser extension, and it was kind of a database command palette thing. And I was like, okay. Like he's like, I need help with the marketing and how I'm gonna call it and stuff. So I talked with him for 2 hours, and at the end, the conclusion was that his marketing line was stop trying to reinvent tabs. They're fine the way they are. You know, but professionals need something better. And he was really happy. He was like, thank you for thinking this through with me. He got up, started to walk, and I just went, but you know, I don't agree with anything of that, right? And he just went, what do you mean? I'm like, if there is a problem, right, it just means that somebody hasn't done anything to solve it. He's like, nobody's trying to solve this. I'm like, well, then it's a deeper psychological issue or a technological one. It means that somebody either didn't have the balls or thinks it's impossible because, you can't perfectly do it. And I always use the Elon Musk's Hyperloop idea for this the most, because it's like, now we have maglev trains, right? They don't make contact with the rails, so they're very fast, but there's still something rubbing on them. It's air. And then between 1980 and 2015 or something, right? No engineer said, you know what? We could make a tube and take some of the air out. Because every other engineer next to that engineer then said, that wouldn't work. Such a long tube, man. We could never get a perfect vacuum. And the other one went, yeah, you're right. Never mind. Screw it. Even though you can speed up the frickin' train by 80%, right? This is why engineers have problems. Like, they think too perfectly. They think too logically. Like, this is like the only idea this man had is that he let go of perfection for 5 seconds and found something incredibly useful. And that's what I did with Horse with Trails. I was like, why doesn't it work? Well, because there's some underlying reason or issue that is probably just in the way. Like throwing your microphone off your table. So, yeah. And I thought about it for 10 minutes and I figured out what the problem was. And I'm horrible at communicating interactions. Like I really suck. I don't have the patience to draw in. I don't use Figma or any design tools anymore. Like I've stopped. The last thing I use is Photoshop CS2 in 2008. And then I just stopped. Like I have a copy of Sketch because I love Sketch. So, and people send me Figma links and I use it. I do like FigJam. I made a big mind map with that once. So that was really cool. I like that product a lot. But yeah, I don't really use any of this stuff. And that's a big issue I have. Like the reason I became the way I am as a consultant first and as a freelancer and doing what I am now is purely, like I said before, nobody's a solopreneur by choice. I am not fast at building apps by choice. It's because I don't know how to explain what's in my head. I just can't. And people just said, okay, well, let's have a meeting about it in 3 days. And lo and behold, I have now been over optimized for creating entire applications in 3 days because I can't explain my thinking. And it will take me just as long to make a PowerPoint presentation as it would to actually code like a very silly demo. So that's what happened. I just coded with iframes. I just made it like as a little page first. I was like, here's iframes. Here's the thing, and here's how it works. And I showed my solution of trails. I showed because trails again, that's why the hyperloop thing works here very well because it's like trails are not a perfect solution. Like every like conceptual design I see of how web journeys and history and everything should be tracked is like perfect. It's super detailed. I'm even seeing now things again. Here we go again. AI. I'm seeing things built with AI that will do that for you, and I'm just like, this is too much. Like, it's way too much. It's crazy. Like, it's very simple. If I clicked on a link to page B on page A, that's it. Then I know why I'm on page B because I was on page A. Ta-da! I don't need a giant timeline. I don't need AI to tell me how I got here. I don't need graphs. Like I saw people making like mind map graphs that automatically tell you how your brain expanded while you were doing the. And I'm just like, it's way too much, way too much. Stop. I don't need a maglev. Okay, I just need to get from A to B, and I just need manual. I like manual things. I'm very boring, and I really see Horse as the Windows 95 edition of Trails. Like they're really simple, very boring, and they work really well. And that's all I ever wanted. And most of my users are the same. They're just like, I just want it to be manual and old school, and I don't need any weird ass user interface or AI to do it for me. I can, right? And that's also what the main issue with the selling point was initially, because we started to sell horses like you can have 1,000 tabs and no problems. Well, that attracted people who have way too many tabs open. Horse does not fix that. Like, it makes it worse. If you never clean up, then like it won't help you at all, right? So we were completely marketing to the wrong people, and our marketing was actually turning off. And I didn't know this. Like I spent like 8 months going completely crazy until somebody like told me that. I paid someone and he told me like, Pascal, you're really good at this. Like you used to be really good at this. Yeah, when you weren't the client. And now you're going crazy and you can't see it. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Here's money. Please tell me what I'm doing wrong. And he was so right. He's like, look, if you tell people this will help you if you have 1,000 tabs open, and your target market are people who clean up manually and don't have 1,000 tabs open, then that market's going to say, I don't need your product. And that's so I was literally our entire marketing site. The first things I wrote were completely wrong. Like it was presenting it as marketing it to people who never clean up their stuff and who hate manual organization, who were looking for a silver bullet, which is not what it is. And at the same time, it was turning off people who wanted a simple manual solution. Like I clean up my tabs. I'm the same. I never have more than 4 tabs open when I'm using Google Chrome. It's clean. I can't concentrate if there's more stuff. So I just close stuff. My problem is that I close stuff that I still need to do because otherwise I can't concentrate. And if I make bookmarks for it and do all sorts of like fancy stuff, I'll forget them. I won't do them. So I need it constantly in my view. So that's what Horse is. Horse simply allows people who already neatly clean up their things to focus to actually clean up their things. The end. Very simple. And yeah, I've been using it myself and I love it.
No, that is fantastic. And so much of your marketing seems to really be on social media. You talk about it, you highlight the things about it. How is that? How has it changed? Because I think you've seen the trends of how marketing has evolved, how people, claim, glom onto products. How is that influencing how you're marketing?
Oh gosh. it's been utter hell. Like, first off, I have no clue about marketing, and I the past year has taught me, especially, designers and developers are ancient enemies that fought on the battlefields of Sparta, right? They would always clash over really important details, like how rounded do you want these corner buttons? And then the developer was like, I don't want to spend time rounding your corner buttons. So, like, ancient enemies. Another ancient enemy of the designer is the marketer. So, as a designer myself and developer, I didn't have the first clash, but I had the second one. I was like, marketing people do nothing, right? I worked on a job in Greece once, um, and the marketer had like delivered some copy for the hero section, and I don't speak or read Greek, but I deleted two words in front of her, and then I'm like, now it fits in my design. And she's like, how the hell did you know exactly to remove those two words from this sentence? I'm like, I can read bullshit in any language. I don't actually need to see, right? I could just guess what the extra words were based on shape and placement alone. But yeah, I have been humbled beyond all means in the past year. Like, I know nothing of marketing. I have shot myself in the foot more than I can ever imagine. I've seen the memes before, like with our buddy Dagobert, right? Is sharing memes about marketing and that it's 99% of the job and stuff. And I like pride myself in the fact that I think that I can put myself beyond biases. And like, so I will respect what he says, even though I don't know it yet. I will respect it. Like, marketing is a lot of the job. I did not respect it at all. I completely, severely underestimated it. I should have started writing about what I was doing, building SEO links, learning how Google Web Console, whatever, I don't know how to named. I should have started all these things and documented everything. And instead, I just focused on making features like everyone else. I made the same mistake as everyone else while I was blind to the fact that I was doing it because I didn't think I was doing it. Yeah, it was terrible. So I know nothing of marketing, but I do know that people have strong opinions on it. That's my answer.
I mean, the first step is in admitting that you don't know as much about a topic as you do,
I know
and then
nothing.
that's it. That's like 90% of the challenge. And so, I guess if history is any indicator, being the unicorn that you are, I think marketing will be one more feather you're going to add to your cap here.
Top marketer. Yeah.
Well, Pascal, it was great chatting with you. I think we
Thanks.
covered a lot of ground here, and that was absolutely fantastic. So,